Hello, this is David, and welcome to a new original story from my Life Stories channel. How are you, Eleanor Simons? Is everything well? The elderly woman winced. How she loathed such overly sweet and deceptive tones. After many, many years on this earth, she could unerringly tell who spoke sincerely and who did not. Very well, Eugene. Thank you. My appetite has returned, and in general, I feel much better. God willing, and thanks to your good wishes, I'll live for several more years. Eleanor saw her grandnephew's face fall, and she grunted with satisfaction. Let him know. His brain is probably already boiling, figuring out how to spend what they'll inherit. It just so happened that Eleanor Simons had always worked a great deal. First, to survive. Then, to build up savings for a rainy day. Then for this. Then for that. And eventually, out of habit. Consequently, everything she built ran itself and brought in a considerable income. But in her old age, she looked back and realized she had nothing but money. Or rather, no one. She had never married. She hadn't met anyone who could melt her heart. Children, too, were never in the cards. It was always no time, until it was too late. She was an only child. A cousin lived somewhere, but they barely communicated. And so it was. There was no one to call, no one to simply chat with. Her health wasn't improving, nor was her circle of friends growing. Eleanor had a flint-like character. Not everyone could endure it. One day, when she could still move about briskly on her own 2 feet, she sincerely tried to be a sweet old lady, like all the other grandmothers. She walked to the park and saw some acquaintances there. Some she knew by sight, others a bit better. She sat down with them. They sat and chatted. And Eleanor even managed to think that being an old lady wasn't so bad, especially as they all delved deeper into their memories. But then the young people arrived in the park, and that's when it started. Their clothes were all wrong. Their makeup too heavy. They swayed and strutted. Eleanor held on as long as she could, then she couldn't take it anymore. What is this, envy? Because you yourselves are nothing but decrepit old hags? Do you remember yourselves in your youth? I don't know everyone, of course, but you, Mildred, remember how your father dragged you home by the hair in front of everyone? Because at 16, you were running off to the carpenter, and the sundresses you wore, everything was spilling out. Mildred, of course, gasped at such unprecedented audacity, while Eleanor just spat and never again tried to be an exemplary grandmother. She became a true recluse. She only interacted with Marina, who came for half a day to cook and clean. Marina had worked for her for a long time. She was quiet and strict, exactly the kind of woman who should be by Eleanor Simons' side. Her relatives had tracked her down quite recently, only about half a year ago. Eleanor perfectly understood that they didn't care a jot about her, but they were eagerly awaiting her inheritance. Well, let them wait. They were family, after all, of sorts. But Eugene and Sarah, his wife, came almost every day, pretending to be very concerned about her health. Eleanor knew they wanted nothing from her, least of all her health. They dreamed of her dying as soon as possible, yet she just kept living and living. Yes, she could barely walk anymore, struggling even to reach the bathroom. Lately, her relatives had been visiting quite frequently, and she began to fear they might want to help her, but true to her nature, she couldn't hold back. Better, you say? Oh, I mean, that's wonderful. Eugene looked at his wife in confusion, but Sarah pressed her lips into a thin line and had no intention of helping him. Eleanor wanted so badly to laugh, but she knew she couldn't. They would immediately realize she understood their care and attention perfectly. When her relatives left, she fell into thought. Not only were they deeply unpleasant to her, but these visits also exhausted her greatly. It was as if they drained the last vestiges of energy from her. Now, she even started worrying about her short remaining life. As soon as they left, and this time they had stayed for a very short while and hadn't even asked for money, as they usually did, Eleanor pulled out her phone. She scrolled through her contacts for a long time, adjusting her glasses on her nose, and then she smiled. Ah, just what I need. She dialed a number. Hello, Joseph. Yes, Lizzie. Listen, I have a rather unusual request for you. When Marina found out what her mistress was planning, she nearly fainted. Are you mad? What if he murders you? Marina, what do I have to lose? This is certainly better than watching the contortions of my relatives, who dream of throwing dirt on my coffin. Marina sadly pursed her lips, making it clear she didn't approve of such a decision. The candidate for the caregiver position arrived the very next day. Dark clothes, a short, almost bristly haircut. Everything about him screamed that he had been behind bars just yesterday. The man looked at Eleanor from beneath his brow. The old lady waved her hand at Marina. "Marina, make us some tea while Alex and I talk." When Marina left, Eleanor looked at the man. "Well, shall we chat? But let's be honest and frank. No hidden meanings. I'll start, if you don't mind. So you don't think you're dealing with a senile old woman?" Alex smiled, took off his backpack, and sat down. "You see, Alex, I don't have much time left to live, and I'd rather not waste precious moments on deceitful people." As she told him about her life and her relatives, Alex nodded. "I understand you. There are many false and insincere people. I grasp the essence of it. Well, if it doesn't bother you that I'm fresh out of prison and that I served time for murder, then I'm at your service." "Alex, I know Joseph wouldn't send a bad person to me. I didn't ask him exactly why you were imprisoned. I just wanted to hear it from you." "Well, the story, to put it mildly, isn't a cheerful one. My wife and I were returning from a party, and I'd only had a single glass of champagne because I had to work the next day. We were walking through the park when we saw 3 guys sitting by a car on the lawn. I later learned one of them had bought a new car, and they were celebrating it. Everyone was already quite drunk, including the driver. As we walked past, one of them decided he wanted female attention, and he picked my wife. In short, a brawl ensued. I'd always been involved in sports, so taking down 3 drunk men wasn't difficult. But one of them fell badly and hit his temple on the curb. The guys turned out to be from quite influential families, so I received no leniency. No one even bothered to investigate properly." Eleanor Simons nodded. "But Joseph said, you have nowhere to live. How can that be if you have a wife?" Alex sneered. "A year later, she married the driver of that car." Eleanor even half stood up. "You don't say?" Alex smirked. "I swear it." For a few days, he settled in. Eleanor observed him. He was clean, respectful. By the second day, Marina was speaking to him normally, giving him larger portions, lamenting that he was practically transparent. Her relatives, after Eleanor told them she felt perfectly fine, hadn't appeared yet, probably worrying about her at home. On the 3rd day, Alex entered Eleanor's room. "When was the last time you were outside?" She laughed. "Oh, Alex, don't even ask. I don't have the means to go outside. And I saw a wheeled walker there. Yes, I tried. I can't manage it." "Well, then, let's get ready. We're going outside now. Everything out there is overgrown." The old lady looked at him, startled. "What are you saying, Alex? How can I go outside?" But 20 minutes later, Eleanor was sitting in the middle of the yard, covered with a blanket, giving orders to Alex. "And that bush used to be round, and nothing at all grew here." The man asked, bewildered. "Are there any scissors or hedge trimmers in the house?" Eleanor pondered. "Tomorrow you'll buy everything, but today, let's just sit." The garden slowly transformed into a beautiful place. Eleanor was delighted, like a child. "You know, Alex, so many flowers used to bloom here." Alex looked uncomfortable, then said, "There's a girl who works at the garden store. She said if you need help, she can assist with the flowers, choose them, and plant them." "Alex, is the girl pretty?" He frowned. "Well, I suppose so." The old lady smiled slyly. "Here's what you do. Arrange for her to come and plant. And of course, I'll pay for everything." Chloe arrived the next day. Everything just flew from her hands. Eleanor watched as the old, overgrown flower beds gradually became neat and blooming. And she also noticed how the girl looked at Alex, and he at her. "Chloe, you'll stay for dinner with us, won't you?" Today has been such a whirlwind that Marina decided to stay late and feed everyone dinner on the open veranda. "Oh, that's a bit awkward." They sat at the table, and Eleanor felt wonderful. It was safe to say she'd never had such lively evenings. And she was utterly enjoying it now. Outside, darkness fell imperceptibly. "Alex, why don't you see the young lady home, please?" Eleanor Simons said. They left, and Eleanor, whom Alex had carefully settled on the sofa, stood up. Strangely, her legs didn't tremble as usual. She took a step, then another. "I wonder if it's just my mood?" The next day, she decided to consult Marina, who just laughed. "Do you truly not understand?" The old lady shook her head, bewildered. "It's simple. Before, you couldn't be persuaded to eat anything. But now Alex keeps feeding you nonstop, coaxing you like a baby. And you don't even notice you're eating. That's where your strength came from. Eleanor sat for a long time, thinking, and then she called for Alex. Can we go to the store? Do you have a driver's license? Yes, of course, though there's nothing to drive. All right, go to the garage. There's a car there. Check everything, take it for a spin. It should be fine, though. I've got its maintenance paid for 10 years in advance. Alex returned about 40 minutes later. What a machine. It looks like it just rolled off the assembly line. When Eleanor pointed to a boutique in the shopping center, he looked at her in surprise. That's men's clothing there. We're going in. He protested. He was embarrassed, but arguing with Lizzie was an exercise in self-disrespect. When they got to the car, Alex murmured, "Why all this?" "Why, you ask? Look how Chloe looks at you. And you at her? Oh, come on, use your words. Did you ask her opinion? You know, among those who haven't been in prison, you often find people far worse." Chloe visited them often. She brought some kind of miracle tea for Eleanor from her grandmother, which truly made her stronger. Eleanor herself laughed. No, ordinary people grow old and die. But the older I get, the more I want to live. Do you even know that I'm walking around the house now, and my legs obey me? Chloe, who was at that moment planting some potted flowers with Alex's help, said, "You absolutely must meet my grandmother. She's been through a lot. And you know, she reminds me of a real iron pillar." The relationship between Chloe and Alex developed. He told Eleanor every day about what was happening between them, but was still afraid to confess his feelings to the girl. Eleanor worried about them as if they were her own children, especially since Chloe also confided in her about her feelings for Alex and was equally afraid to admit them. And so Eleanor decided to celebrate her anniversary, a date only Marina knew about. The house was full of guests. Among them were the relatives who, frankly, couldn't understand why an old woman who had been practically bedridden for almost a year was having such a celebration. Wasting money on such nonsense. Their money, by the way. And she had invited so many people. Hardly any old ones, and all so young. And the tables, it was terrifying to think how much money had been spent. They looked around. The hostess herself hadn't appeared. Sarah, sipping champagne, leaned into her husband's ear. Maybe she finally kicked the bucket from all the excitement. Eugene drawled, "I certainly hope so. How much longer can she keep clinging to life? I wonder if they'll will her out on a bed or in a coffin." He had barely finished speaking when he heard, "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming." Eugene and Sarah's mouths dropped open. Eleanor Simons looked magnificent. Some young man was supporting her arm, but she walked on her own, elegantly dressed, with makeup, and even wearing small heels. What is this? Then even stranger things began to happen. She walked with this man over to a young woman. He proposed marriage to her, and Eleanor gifted them the house she currently lived in. How is this possible? Eugene immediately broke into a sweat and sank into a chair. They had already accumulated so much debt in anticipation of this house. Sarah hissed. She needs to be poisoned urgently before she squanders everything, the old fool. And just then, a voice behind them said, "I heard everything. And if a single hair falls from Eleanor Simons' head, you're finished. Prison isn't new to me. I'll do my time and come back. But from where you're going,